if anybody's going to be able to get international buyers and be able to leverage the solving of the custody issue, it's going to be Boris.
Hey everyone, welcome to our latest Traded Black podcast. Happy midweek. I'm your host, Shad Dales. Hope you're having a good week so far. Industry a little bit slower to say the least compared to what we experienced last month, but still things moving behind the scenes. So let's find out what some of that stuff is and some of the announcements that have been made so far this week. So let's welcome in the gents. Anthony Verrill, good to see you. Happy midweek.
Happy midweek. It's good. I'll be seeing you guys tomorrow in Toronto. I'm pumped.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Good little event that we're heading to. Going to be recording podcasts, live stream tomorrow aftermarket. Probably kicking that off around 6:30 with the Terracin crew. Big investor day that they're having, but should see some big names in Toronto, including Tim Seymour. Hopefully we can get him on from CNBC, but Jason, Ziad, the whole team. We're going to see Benny Boy on location as well. Good to see. Looking forward to seeing you in person. How are you, sir?
Yeah, doing well, and I'm looking forward to that investor day as well. It's sold out from my knowledge. That's
Yeah.
what Jason Wild posted. So a lot of interest in this company, and should be fun.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, let's jump into it. All views on the Traded Black podcast, the guests of this podcast are purely opinion. You should not treat any opinions expressed by us or guests as investment advice. And the views on this podcast are solely intended to be informational and are not investment advice. Okay, let's begin. News earlier this week involving Curaleaf, who announced that they're applying to list subordinate voting shares on the TSX, which obviously is a big step in the right direction for this company. What'd you guys make of it, Anthony, as far as this announcement being made, and what you think timeline-wise about the potential of Curaleaf actually listing on the TSX?
I thought it was great. It's good to see companies uplisting. This is a trend that I think we're going to see just keep moving forward. We had Verano announced last week that they were going to be uplisting to the SIBO, and that's already started. You've got TSX going uplisting. You got Jesus, I'm fucking up this morning. You've got Curaleaf uplisting to the TSX. And I mean, I think it's a good trend. I mean, you're going to be able to solve the custody issue. You're going to be able to have institutional interest actually come in when that appetite is well served. And then if anybody's going to be able to get international buyers and be able to leverage the solving of the custody issue, it's going to be Boris.
Yeah,
I think that he's going to be able to generate an appetite for Curaleaf stock. Curaleaf has a global presence as well as a foothold in the United States. And I mean, I think this ultimately does bode well for them. The stock was up, I think 5% yesterday. I would expect continued strength on the back of this going into earnings.
Yeah. Ben, why are these companies, like for the longest time, they couldn't list on the TSX? First Terracin, but that was 5 years in the making. But how is a company like Curaleaf been able to, in your opinion, list on the TSX? What do you think's changed?
Well, I think first of all, we had Terracin to maneuver their share structure and do what they had to do to get listed. So I think them leading has allowed Curaleaf to say, look at that, what they've done, and sort of try to engineer that same sort of share structure and maneuver those requirements to list. So that was definitely helpful. And I think there's more of an urgency now because as we get closer to reform, these uplistings will help them eventually go to the uplist to the big U.S. stock exchanges because the requirements and disclosure requirements, et cetera, are more in line with them. So it's going to be an easier lift to uplist to the U.S. when able. So that's why I think you're seeing this move now. As we get closer to reform, more companies are going to do it. And as Anthony mentioned as well, gain less attention was the SIBO with Verano. And the SIBO is a tier 1 exchange. So they're doing the same sort of dynamics, making it easier to uplist to the US and also to reduce their volatility. That's something that Boris noted with the CSE and the MSOs is using swaps and there's a whole bunch of ARB spreads in there. Now they can own the shares directly. Like they can purchase a block of Terracin or Curaleaf when they uplist directly from the TSX. They're able to do that. They don't have to swap out anymore. So there's a bunch of benefits there to reduce volatility as well.
So do people understand they haven't been able to do that in the past, hence the reason why there's a lot of volatility, correct?
Yeah, I think that's aided to the volatility. It's a more liquid market. Now they can get purchase shares directly from the TSX because it is a tier 1 exchange. They don't have to swap out on the CSE or whatnot to own those shares or OTC.
This is why it feels different though now. Like the conversations in Chicago, cautiously optimistic. No one thinking that rescheduling is not going to happen, but they're not saying it's going to be rushed. You keep saying March next year, Anthony, but with this urgency, Terracin led the way. Verano, Curaleaf, we're going to see more companies in the next few weeks, if not months, do the same thing. But I think this is just another example as to why it definitely feels different that we have something here that we will see some reform in the next 6 months, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's different this time. I mean, like we talked about with Rob Seacrest from Polaris. I mean, the political will of the and Brady Cobb, the political will of the establishment is behind the cannabis industry for the first time ever. Granted, there's some turmoil going on in the government right now. We had the war breaking out in Israel and
For sure.
Palestine. You had Kevin McCarthy that was booted from as Speaker of the House last week, and you've got geopolitical forces as well as interest rates in the macro kind of throwing wrenches and everything left, right, and center. But it is, I think, time to get some stuff done. I think that once we get a speaker in, hopefully it's Scalise or hopefully it's McCarthy that retakes that position, and we can get momentum back in safe. But yeah, I mean, this time I really, really do think it's
Yeah.
different. Not just saying that.
Talk about chaos in Washington right now. You're ousted as Speaker of the House last week, and now floating the idea of reclaiming that post a week later. I can't keep up with this. I have no idea what's going on. It's insane.
No,
It's crazy.
no, and I mean it's indicative of the U.S. government. I mean, it really is a banana republic that's going on here right now. Like, I don't think Matt, as much as I do like Matt Gaetz, in my own opinion, just because he's a friend of the cannabis industry and he has a lot of good things to say. I mean, like we call Jim Jordan an agent of chaos. I mean, Matt Gaetz's actions to oust McCarthy in kind of a senseless manner was basically just him flexing his muscles with 8 other MAGA Republicans and the rest of the Democrats to kind of just get it done. Timing was terrible.
I
I mean,
know.
obviously hindsight's 2020, but yeah, I mean, McCarthy's probably the path of least resistance to get back in there and get a speaker and the House operating
Yeah.
as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy how they want to, some people want McCarthy to be back in because he's been, help funding the Ukraine war and so forth. And I think some people think that he'll help on the Israel front, or maybe they'll do like a joint bill which funds both. So it's kind of ironic
They're
that,
trying.
a change in the macro. Some people want perhaps McCarthy to get back in because he's more of a known commodity with,
Makes sense.
funding
Yeah,
different.
I mean they're trying to push an incremental Ukraine aid package through on the back of an Israel aid package,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of support from the GOP and on the Republican side by Jewish citizens of the United States.
Yeah.
So I mean I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of posturing up and putting an emphasis on getting that done. But I mean Israel is it's somewhere that we're probably going to send aid to, whether you want to take either side or not.
Yeah.
It's
I
just going
agree.
to be a function of do they jam Ukraine through there as well.
Yeah. But all in all, a net positive for safe if McCarthy is back in as speaker, correct?
Oh yeah, he's voted twice for it. He hasn't
Yeah.
voted for any other
Yeah,
cannabis bill, really. But safe, he's definitely on the record as voting at least
Yeah.
twice for it. So he would be a net positive for safe, I think.
Yeah. Another announcement earlier this week, the cannabis company Holdings, formerly known as Columbia Care, they announced that they raised $25 million 3 weeks ago. Yesterday, they made another announcement where they have paid down $25 million of debt. Big move for them. They've delivered a notice of partial redemption to the holders of the company's outstanding 13% senior secured notes, which was due on May 14th, 2024. So, Anthony, reading this story, there's a little bit more to the announcement involved in this with regards to the debt, but you want to maybe explain to our viewers as to what it meant?
yeah. I mean, this is great. It's knocking out 25 of the 38.2 that's siloed in that debt instrument that's due coming early 2024. They're shoring up the balance sheet. I mean, Nick's doing what he said he was going to do, and I mean, this bodes very well for the for the cannabis. This is just one step in the right direction that I think we're going to see many moving forward. And this is going to be a continuing trend as the debt and credit profiles of these cannabis companies is going to be front and center when evaluating the potential free cash flow that could be generated by
Yeah.
negating 280 on a go forward basis if we do see some sort of regulatory shift, whether it be safe or rescheduling.
What a smart move of a half that management last month to actually raise when they did during that run, because that was a short run. But you want to talk about timing, Ben? that was great timing on their behalf.
It was. That was the time to do it. I mean, the cannabis had moved, I think, about 3x at that point, and even though it was priced, 20% or below the market, I mean,
Yeah,
that was a really, really good time to raise, and they took advantage of market conditions. Now, as we see that those conditions aren't quite there anymore, MSOs has retraced about 50% from the closing high of 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. So yeah, they took advantage of market conditions. They raised. Now they're paying off some debt, and we've seen this as a trend lately with some other companies. Most notably, Aurora Cannabis, who purchased back debentures so that they wouldn't have so much debt payment to make as well. So a lot of companies trying to get expenses under control, pay off debt, and that is the way going forward if you can, especially if you can raise that in the market 3 or 4 X's and
yeah,
pay off some debt that way.
yeah. Want to shift now south to the state of Georgia. Made some interesting news earlier this week. They became the first state in the nation to introduce an initiative allowing nearly 120 pharmacies to apply for licenses to offer medicinal cannabis products referred to as the pharmacy rule. Um, I think you guys are looking at this from both different perspectives. Ben, you like this. I think Anthony, you don't. But maybe Ben, outline as to why you thought this was a big announcement and why you might think this is actually good for the overall industry.
Okay, I like it insofar is that it could allow greater access to cannabis in general being
Yeah,
distributed through the pharmacy. Now, this is under the assumption that the current models in other states, whether it's adult use or medical, that states' rights are involved and that those models won't change. So, if that is true and if this is just limited to this state, then I think I don't have a problem with it. I guess
yeah,
the problem could be that if this is very successful and, with cannabis going to Schedule 3 and there's a pharmaceutical, pharma intonations in there, will other states kind of look at this model and then shift their model over time? And I think that's the one. I don't know if it's a material risk or anything, but I guess it has that potential if it's very successful. But no other states are doing it this way right now, so I'm not sure if that will play.
you. I guess agree with some of those concerns, Anthony, that Ben brings up
Yeah, I mean, I don't like this whatsoever.
at
I don't
all.
really like cannabis being associated with pharmacies. I don't like cannabis being associated with the pharmaceutical industry at all. I mean, you want to have true medicinal marijuana or true medicinal cannabis and derivatives that are administered to patients in a true medical fashion. Sure, give them Epidiolex. You can go into dronabinol. You can give them high powered tinctures and products, but at the same time, like, I don't think that there's a place for true pharmacy in the cannabis industry, and I don't like the precedent that this could potentially set for other markets. If you want to talk about existential risks to potential MSOs, I would be willing to bet that one of the top ones in orders of magnitude is going to be their massive retail footprints and the brick and mortar that they've invested into those retail footprints. Seeing some sort of shift into a pharmacy model would blow that entire model up. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just kind of looking forward, as my time horizon's always been quite far out in this sector. And I don't know if this is being used as a pilot program or if this just happens to be a very unique situation as it relates to Georgia, but I'm
Yeah.
not really a fan of it altogether.
So Don Murphy has indicated when he's lobbying for this industry that Big Pharma really doesn't have a lot of interest pertaining to this space. So is there any kind of inclination based off of that feedback that would make sense that you look, this is a pilot run for the state of Georgia. We shouldn't be too concerned about Big Pharma getting too involved, or do you look at this differently?
So I kind of bifurcate the big pharma. I don't consider Walgreens and CVS big pharma. I consider Walgreens and CVS retailers. I consider big pharma Pfizer, Eli Lilly,
Okay, fair enough.
the big boys that are producing pharmaceuticals, drug development, and medicines at scale. If you want to talk about the pharmacy aspect of it, CVS and Walgreens and Walmart, which and Publix, which have huge pharmacies in the Southeast and across the United States. That's not big pharma. That's retail.
Fair enough. What do you think would happen if they went that route, though? Like, think of all the infrastructure. Like, what would happen to this industry? Which is why I think it's not going to happen. They've got, like, the trains left the station. I get your concerns with it, but if that were to happen, like, how catastrophic would that be for the overall industry? It'd be huge.
Um, Yes and no. I mean, you've got large institutions like Polaris, IPR, New Lake, that are sitting on the exposure of a lot of those retail um, portfolios. Chicago Atlantic. I mean, the lenders in the space. A lot of the retail has either been private investors that have leased back the dirt to the MSOs. So there would be people holding the bag, but I mean, I don't know how existential it would be essentially to the MSOs, but it'd be very disruptive in the short and the long term because you'd have to re-rate the business
100%.
models of a
Yeah.
lot of these businesses.
You brought up Polaris, Rob Seacrest. He actually had a conversation directly with Senator Steve Daines yesterday. So Rob is actually coming on tomorrow morning. We're going to be posting that podcast. We're going to be asking what those conversations were about and get some feedback to you, the viewers, on what we can expect or hear about latest from Steve Daines, who's a big supporter, obviously, with SAFE and for this industry as a whole. Let's switch now to some of the company's performances so far this week. Consortium remains to be strong. Number 6 in Florida, had over 300 shares traded yesterday. This is a company that really grabbed a lot of people's attention in the early days, went quiet for a number of years, now back on the radar of many retail investors. Ben, have you been following this story a little bit?
Not too closely. I think Anthony might know a little bit more details. I know they had they have a pretty decent sized footprint in Florida, and they're very early in Texas, right? Or some involvement there.
Yeah. Yeah. They've got 30 plus doors in Florida. They're number 6 overall in the OMMU. Week over week, they're usually hanging out about that spot. They're trading at around a $30 million market cap. Stock's up about 10% the past 2 days. Yesterday, it traded about 300,000 shares of volume. Right now, it's sitting at about 30,000 shares. But still, it's at the top. It's the top performer right now in the space. It's up 4.5%. Their
Great.
debt is owned 30% by GTI. There's a lot of things to like. I mean, full disclosure, it's a position of mine. I've got about 100,000 shares in it, so I mean, I'm in it for the longer haul and looking at it to be more of one of those high impact plays on the back of regulatory changes. That's in no way, shape, or form a and financial advice or saying to go buy it, but I think it's definitely something that warrants attention, and it's an interesting name in the space when you're looking at quality. And I mean, those, I don't want to call them boring, but they're predictable in terms of growth.
No,
This is
it
a
seems like
company.
something to maybe watch out for, especially if Florida goes recreational cannabis. If that gets on
Huge.
the ballot and it passes, they have a pretty decent sized footprint. You would think somebody would be potentially interested to acquire those assets, right?
Yeah,
GTI.
November 8th is a big day. I mean, I've acquired my position. It's down, not my position, but the stock itself is down about 30% in the past 3 weeks, with the rest of the sector kind of re-rating off of that rally. I'll probably double my position going into November 8th. Because if it does pass, or if we get an inkling that it's going to
That
go
would be
on to the
huge.
ballot, it's good. It's going to start to take
So
off.
is there going to be a
That's great.
conclusive decision on November 8th in terms of
Oh
whether
yeah,
it's allowed on the ballot or not?
November 8th are the arguments. We'll know November 8th whether it's going to be on the ballot or not.
Are those just the arguments or the final decision? So the arguments
That's the
begin on
final.
November 8th or the
The
actual.
we will know by end of day November 8th whether adult use is going to be on the ballot in Florida or not.
Moment of truth for the industry. That's
Yep.
going to be a big day. But if they get and we get
For
what we
Florida.
want for Florida, but
Yeah.
think about it. Florida is the most lucrative state right now. People are following this so closely. I think not only for the state of Florida, but this will do for the industry as a whole. If this is on the ballot, it's huge. You brought up MSOs earlier this week, Ben. We've discussed in previous podcasts that, hey, retail investor, I know you want GTI and other companies to go up to 25, $30 eventually, maybe even higher, but everything starts and ends with MSOs, with getting a bulk of what was the volume actually you outlined yesterday? Truly, in comparison to, say, MSOs. Like, again, this ETF basically starts and ends where this industry goes, right?
Yeah, True Leaf, I believe, was 70x under the volume of MSOs. on a market cap weighted basis. So the notional value of the stock trade in Trueleaf was 70 times less than MSOs. So for my money, obviously I watch all the component stocks, but MSOs is always at the top of my portfolio watch because it is the great indicator of where these top companies in the sector are going. Right?
Yeah.
There's ARB spreads involved with the swaps that are indicated in that MSOs. So, I mean, these companies, the top companies, aren't going very far away from where the ETF is going to run. So,
Yeah.
and with MSOs decreasing about 50% value, retracing, and through that, the breakout point of the 725 area, it's a very interesting time. Obviously, we're making lower highs, and we're trying to set a lower a floor here at about 680, and we're bouncing off that. So I think it's a very interesting watch because we've had retracement, reform is still on the table, rescheduling is still on the table, but it just the fast money that moved the stock right now in a news driven market has temporarily evaporated. So
Yeah.
look for
Which
things
makes
to
sense.
heat up. I think going up until now and in Christmas, perhaps rescheduling ruling within 90 days. It's about 60 days now. Maybe we'll get something there.
November 8th. That is on my schedule. That's for sure. We saw Curaleaf. They were up yesterday based on news of the TSX. Same as Tilray. They were up 6%. They're showing signs of life. One last company I wanted to bring up in the psychedelic space is Cybin. What a run they've been on the last couple of weeks. Steve Cohen's 0.72 firm that purchased 18.95 million shares 3 weeks ago. This share price has like doubled or close to it in the last 2 to 3 weeks. But clearly, people love the purchase of Steve Cohen, vote of confidence, the small pharma acquisition. This company, Anthony, is quietly going about being perhaps the leader in the overall industry.
Yeah, I mean it's been on a tear. I completely missed the trade. 35 cents. The Steve Cohen announcement came out, and I said, "Well, it's probably going to shoot from here," and just didn't trust my gut. It shot from here. It's up over almost 100% right now since that announcement. I'm sure it'll probably hit that in the next
Is that
couple of
all?
weeks. But I mean, it's showing continued strength. I mean, you've got 003 coming out. You've got the small pharma acquisition closing. You've
I
got
know.
small pharma's data that I think came out about a week and a half ago that was favorable. There probably is going to be positive catalyst for this stock moving forward into the end of the year. I'm
Yeah.
curious to see how it reacts and how it performs going into the end of the year. I was hoping for a pullback, but it hasn't happened yet, and I don't know if it's
Yeah.
going to happen with
Yeah.
the price action that's surrounding the name right now.
Yeah. All right, gents, we got flights to catch. And then we're all meeting together in person tomorrow in Toronto. So going to the country's biggest city to check out Terracin. We'll be with the crew. So leave a comment below. Let us know if there's any questions, anything you want to know about the industry, anything you want to know about Terracin. They're doing a big investor day this Friday down at the TSX. But as I said, having a big cocktail party after market tomorrow. We will be there in person live streaming. So make sure you log on. As far as time, we're going to try to get this out probably a little after 6 o'clock, depending obviously on the amount of people that'll be attending the event and when we can sit down with the crew. But between 6 and 6:30, we'll confirm that at some point tomorrow. So make sure to check us out through our community guidelines on YouTube, as well as our Twitter handle, where we'll update you in the afternoon when we're going live. Safe travels, and I shall see both you guys in Toronto tomorrow.
All right, guys, see you there.
I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Take care. Hey everyone, so how are you surviving these tough market conditions right now? Are there any emerging industries that you want us to cover? Any guests that you want us to interview? Then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to source out. As usual, share this video with your network, smash that like and notification bell, and as usual, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.